They say nothing happens at 2 a.m., but that's a lie. Something does happen, something most people never see. While the world sleeps, your home becomes a stage. Angels move, darkness lurks, and in the silence, destinies shift. Kathryn Kuhlman discovered a secret in those early morning hours that gave her power not just in public, but in private. Most miss it, but if you knew what really happens in homes at 2 a.m., you'd never sleep through it again. You see, there's something different about 2 a.m. The world is asleep, the noise has quieted, and the distractions have faded into the shadows. That's when heaven often moves the loudest, not with chaos, but with whispers, with silence that speaks, with presence that fills a room like thick oil. Most people don't know what happens in homes at that hour. Most people think it's just night, just rest, just another few hours before the alarm clock. But those who have touched something deeper, those who have felt the breath of God brush across their spirit at that hour, they know better. Kathryn Kuhlman was one of them. She knew something many never discover. 2 a.m. isn't just a time, it's an invitation. It's the time when the Spirit searches homes, looking for someone awake, someone open, someone willing, not religious, not perfect, just available. The world has a rhythm, and so does heaven. And in the rhythm of the night, when everything natural quiets down, the supernatural begins to stir. It's as though all of creation leans in, waiting to see will someone respond. Kathryn didn't just prepare for her meetings in the daylight. She didn't just rehearse sermons or schedule events. She communed. She waited, often in the secret hours when no one was watching. She understood that the power on stage was only ever a reflection of the surrender in the shadows. And those shadows often stretched long across her prayer room in the middle of the night. At 2 a.m., something happens in the air. You can feel it if you're sensitive. The weight, the stillness, the electricity of another realm stepping into ours. Most people miss it because they're chasing sleep. And sleep isn't the enemy, but when heaven is knocking, even rest can become a thief. That's why certain moments in life come and go without warning, because the person heaven was trying to visit simply wasn't available. Kathryn Kuhlman wasn't powerful because of eloquence or technique. She was powerful because she showed up. She got up. When others slept, she leaned in. That's the secret. The Spirit doesn't look for crowds, he looks for communion. He doesn't demand grand gestures, he watches for quiet obedience. When you wake up at 2 a.m. and your chest is heavy, or you can't explain why you're suddenly alert, it might not be insomnia. It might be invitation. Homes at 2 a.m. become the stage for two very different forces. One, the weight of God's presence, ready to move through open hearts. The other, the heaviness of spiritual resistance, hoping you'll stay distracted, tired, or indifferent. Kathryn knew how to shift an atmosphere, not through shouting, not through formulas, but through surrender in stillness. She learned to walk with the invisible, to wait for the whisper, to lean into the quiet. And that's what most people miss. They expect heaven to come with noise, with thunder, with lightning. But often heaven tiptoes in. It moves slowly, softly, searching for an open door. And in the quiet hours when no one's posting, calling, or planning, that's when the spiritual becomes visible. That's when lives shift, not with a bang, but with a breath. There are moments when you wake up and feel something is different in the air. You may think it's just anxiety or an overactive mind or a bad dream, but sometimes it's the Spirit asking, will you meet me now? Those moments are gifts, and if you respond, if you get up and just sit in the quiet, something begins to move. Kathryn lived for those moments. That's where her strength was born. not in lights, but in layers of surrender stacked up over years of secret prayer. She knew that what happens in homes at 2 a.m. could determine what happens in lives at 2 p.m. She knew that prayers whispered in the dark carry a different weight than prayers shouted in the light. Because when you give God your quiet hours, your inconvenient hours, your tired hours, He gives you something eternal in return. There are breakthroughs waiting in homes right now, but they're knocking at night. There are angels standing by, but they don't come with fanfare, they come to the surrendered. Not the loudest, not the strongest, not the most religious, but the most yielded. That's what Kathryn discovered, and that's why 2 a.m. became sacred to her. So, if you've ever woken up in the middle of the night and felt like something was calling your name, don't roll over. Don't scroll. Don't dismiss it. Sit up, open your heart. Speak out loud if you need to. Whisper if that's all you've got. Because in that moment, heaven might be passing by your house, looking for a home where it's welcome. And what happens next might just change everything. Here's the ** expanded 800 word segment for key point 2 **, continuing the flow of the previous section in a seamless conversational tone. Kathryn Kuhlman's life didn't begin in the spotlight. Long before the crowds gathered, before the miracles stirred across auditoriums, and before her name carried weight in the spiritual world, there was a woman alone in a room whispering one word, yes. That was her secret. Not charisma, not strategy, not popularity. It was surrender, quiet, costly, total. She didn't surrender once and move on. No, it was daily, hourly, sometimes minute by minute. She gave up everything she thought she was supposed to be so she could become everything God intended. She walked away from the love of her life, a man she had deeply cared for, because she knew compromise would cost her the presence, and to her the presence was everything. What most people saw the elegant woman in flowing gowns, speaking with a trembling voice and commanding presence that was the fruit, but the root was in her secret place, her private time, her tears, her brokenness, her humility before the unseen. At 2 a.m., while others rested in comfort, she was often wrestling with surrender, wrestling with her own will, laying down her pride, her plans, her pain. She often said she was nothing, that there was nothing special about her, and she meant it, because she had come face with the kind of surrender that strips a person down to their soul, where nothing is hidden, where everything is laid bare, and where all that's left is a heart saying, take all of me or take none of me. That's why Kathryn's life carried so much weight, because she didn't just believe in God, she belonged to Him. Entirely, there was no part of her life she held back, no secret compartments, no backup plans. That kind of surrender is terrifying. It's not glamorous, it's not safe, but it's where the fire falls. It's where the invisible becomes visible, and it's where heaven finds a home on earth, not in buildings, but in bodies. Her secret was never a method. It wasn't a formula she could teach. It was simply that she had died to everything else. She wasn't trying to impress. She wasn't building a brand. She wasn't chasing applause. She was consumed, possessed by purpose. She lived with one goal, to never grieve the presence that had captured her soul. People often ask, how do I carry what she carried? The answer isn't in her words. It's in her decisions. It's in what she gave up that nobody saw. It's in the quiet nights she chose the Spirit over sleep. It's in the prayers she prayed when no one would know. It's in the moments she said no to things that weren't even sinful, just distracting, because she knew even a good thing could become the wrong thing if it came between her and the presence. At 2 a.m., her room wasn't just a place to rest. It was an altar, a battlefield, a sanctuary. She didn't just visit God there, she lived with him there. And over time, that room became the furnace where her life was refined, where her motives were tested, where her tears became prayers and her pain became fuel. Most people want the fire, but they don't want the furnace. Kathryn didn't just want the fire, she welcomed the burning. Because she knew what it produced: intimacy, power, purity. There's something that happens in a person when they give everything. They begin to glow with a different kind of light. People noticed it in her. They couldn't always describe it, but they felt it. A presence, a weight, an atmosphere that followed her. And it wasn't because she was trying to be noticed. It was because she had disappeared. She had stepped out of the way, and what remained was a vessel empty of self, full of spirit. Surrender isn't weakness. It's the ultimate strength. Kathryn was a surrendered woman, but don't mistake that for passivity. Her surrender made her bold. It gave her courage that most people only dream of. Because when you've given up everything, what is left to fear? Criticism couldn't shake her. Loneliness couldn't stop her. Death threats couldn't move her. She had already died 1,000 deaths behind closed doors. So in public, she stood like steel wrapped in silk. And this is what homes are missing today. Not more noise, not more inspiration, but more surrender. Quiet, trembling, fearless surrender. Not just a moment of it, a life of it. The kind that starts at 2 a.m., when nobody's watching, when the world is dark and your flesh begs for rest, but your spirit knows there's something more. Kathryn Kuhlman's secret wasn't locked in a vault. It was right in front of all of us. A surrendered woman, empty of herself, full of presence. That's what happens in homes when someone chooses to meet the spirit instead of the pillow. Everything shifts, heaven draws near, and the secret becomes yours too. Most people don't realize what kind of atmosphere their home is carrying, especially at night. At 2 a.m., your home isn't just 4 walls and a roof. It's either an altar or a battleground, a place where peace rests or a space where chaos lingers quietly in the air. You can walk into some rooms and feel heaviness, even if everything looks perfect on the outside. That's not coincidence, it's climate, spiritual climate, and whether we know it or not, we're all hosting something in our homes. Kathryn Kuhlman understood this deeply. She treated her home, especially her private room, like holy ground. Not because it was fancy or flawless, but because it was prepared, saturated, protected. She knew the Spirit didn't just show up randomly. He came where he was invited, where he was honored, where the atmosphere welcomed him. And that didn't happen by accident. It was intentional. At 2 a.m., when the world is sleeping, homes become silent stages. Some are filled with light, warmth, and the presence of peace. Others feel cold, even in summer. The air is thick. You wake up and don't know why you're anxious or angry or sad. That's because spiritual climates are real and they don't respect furniture, decorations, or income levels. What lives in a home is determined by what's allowed in, what's ignored, and what's entertained. You can be living in a beautiful house and still feel like you're surrounded by darkness. That's because the true war isn't seen with the eyes, it's felt in the atmosphere. Kathryn never allowed that atmosphere to be random. She created an altar in her home, not just physically, but spiritually. Every room was a space where the spirit could move, and if something began to shift, if strife, fear, confusion, or weariness tried to creep in, she addressed it immediately. She never got comfortable with anything that grieved the presence. Some people wait until their life is falling apart before they pray over their homes. But Kathryn didn't wait for crisis, she stayed ahead of it. She knew that her home had to reflect heaven before her life ever could, and for her that started when no one was looking. That meant worshiping in the kitchen. That meant praying in the hallway. That meant walking through the house and declaring peace even when everything looked normal. Because here's the truth. Peace isn't always natural, it's cultivated. It's chosen. It's spoken into the atmosphere. And at 2 a.m., when the veil between the natural and spiritual feels thinner, your home tells a story. Not the one you post online, but the one heaven and hell both recognize. Is it a sanctuary, or is it a space of confusion, clutter, and compromise? Kathryn taught through her life that a home isn't just where you sleep. It's where you build altars, where you fight battles, where you create legacy. She believed your home should be so full of presence that even strangers who visit can feel something they can't explain. Not because of music playing, not because of candles or decor, but because something invisible is being honored in the atmosphere. And that's where most people get it wrong. They want peace without presence. They want comfort without cost. But peace is a byproduct of what's enthroned in your home. If the spirit is welcomed, truly welcomed, then even at 2 a.m., when darkness presses in from all sides, your home becomes untouchable. Not perfect, not free from storms, but filled with something storms can't shake. When you treat your home like an altar, heaven treats it like territory, and that's what Kathryn experienced. Her life was marked by miracles in public, but they were rooted in what she carried in private. The same spirit that moved in stadiums moved through her hallway at 2 a.m. Because he had been given permission not just on stage, but at home. If you've ever wondered why you feel unrest in your home at night, why certain patterns repeat, or arguments rise up for no reason, or you wake up with anxiety you can't name, check the atmosphere. Check what's been allowed to settle in. Not just what you watch or listen to, but what you tolerate. Because what you tolerate in your home, you authorize in your life. Kathryn didn't wait for someone else to set the climate, she set it herself. And so can you. You don't need perfect prayers or fancy words. You need willingness. You need boldness to walk through your space and declare, this home is not a playground for fear. It's an altar for presence. That changes everything. Suddenly the late night hours aren't haunting their holy. You don't dread 2 a.m. You anticipate it, because you know what happens in homes at 2 a.m. isn't random. It's spiritual, and once your home becomes an altar, no darkness can linger without permission.